Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Boy, it was a tough morning. Still is, of course, delayed opening today. Kids are heading out 2 hours late, and so they'll leave mid-show, and we'll see if everything goes well, and I don't have to stop things and yell at them. A little bit of a computer crash. We discovered this problem last night, and I thought we had resolved it. We took all of Greg's good advice, zapping prams and zapping everything else. I'm not sure what, if anything, in particular caused it, and I thought things had resolved, and the computer had a nice night off to rest. Everything was playing beautifully, and the stream was up and running literally right till showtime, and then things just went dark. So we zapped the prams again. It took an awful long time to get things back up and running. I have my concerns. I guess this computer is, about a 2008 model, so maybe it's about time to think about replacing that. Okay, that's an expense I didn't really feel like facing anytime soon. But we'll limp along and see if everything is okay, and I'll try and keep the computer active and busy so that it doesn't try to go into sleep mode, and God only knows what's going to happen at that point. If we disappear, we disappear. What can you do? We'll survive. But back up and running. I'm sure Greg anxious to bring you his stories, and doors open immediately. Greg, you don't have to wait because I know you have to get off to work today. And what a morning. Okay, well, it's bracket time again, and I didn't do my homework as usual, and so I was up late trying to figure out what I'm going to put. I don't know why I put this much time into it. Every year I feel like, I guess I could win, but it's all random. I don't know why I bother. But the games are no fun unless you have a stake in them, and the picking is just no fun. Some people love it. One of my younger son decided to make some picks this year, so I don't know, we could share that. That's news. My Twitter feed isn't going to be much use to me today. Make sure you use the KITM hashtag if you want any hope of having your comments noticed. I tweeted that funky picture of Donald Trump in the golf course back in the 90s is what it looks like. I don't know, maybe he's just wearing his 90s outfit. Boy, did that get picked up, and everybody's going crazy with that one. I think Rosie O'Donnell found that one overnight, and R.I.P. my mentions, as the kids say today. So no chance of seeing much happening in my regular notifications column, so use that KITM hashtag to try and make things stick around. I've got a couple of notes there, and a couple of notes in Skype from Greg. Although Greg, I don't know whether Greg wandered away at this point or not. But all right, whenever you're ready. Otherwise, we'll run down your list and see what you've got here for today. I'm sorry about that delay in getting the show up and running. It's left a 14-minute hole in the thing here, and now I've got to figure out what I'm going to do after the show. I got to end at 11, of course, to let the guys on the after show come through. But then I'm going to have a tape that is 14 minutes short, and if I ever want to use this as a rerun, I'm going to have to come up with another 14 minutes. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll just leave it with the hole there. And just never use it as a rerun. How about that? That can be our new pledge. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to be able to gather my thoughts today or not. So, let's see. We'll start slowly and try to remind myself of what happened overnight. I got no idea. Trump is out with I've seen a list circulating of programs he seeks to eliminate funding for entirely in his new budget, but I don't know how much time you want to spend on that one since, remember, as always, the thing that members of both parties in Congress say whenever they get a presidential budget is the best thing that they'll say is it's a good starting point, but that it's otherwise dead on arrival. I have big news. I have small news. Where do you want to start? Maybe with the minor news. Judy Vincent reminds me of this one, and I think Kate Sherrill pointed me at this one yesterday too. Now, of course, it's become big news. Once again, another ridiculous Republican, moralistic, lecturing politician has found himself caught with someone, I guess probably with no pants on, somebody that you don't want to get caught on. And you know how the saying goes, you're okay unless they catch you with, what was it, a live boy or a dead girl? Well, luckily no dead girl here. Live boy though, an underage at that. That's why we say boy. That's the news. Let's take take a look at that one. This is actually written up here. I saw sort of a meme floating around about the guy earlier, and well, that was an unfortunate one, but it got the gist of it anyway. Let's see. Oklahoma State Senator found with teen boy in motel. Poor motel. Could face charges. Authorities say could. He might. I don't know. I guess that it's uncertain. He might, abscond with who knows what or who knows who and make off to someplace he can't be extradited from. So, although the charges would still be filed. Well, charges could be filed Thursday. That's today. So, I guess if you write it up last night and if the prosecutor's office is closed, you write could face charges. Probably will. Let's see. Who is it? Charges against an Oklahoma State senator who police say was found with a teenage boy in a motel room in Oklahoma City suburb of Moore, according to a local prosecutor. Cleveland County District Attorney Greg Mashburn said Wednesday that he would not say what charges might be filed against Republican Senator Ralph Shorty, hey Shorty, of Oklahoma City, but told the Associated Press that police have presented a report to his office. Really? How nice. KOCO reported that Moore police announced that it recommended 3 prostitution-related charges against the state senator, including soliciting prostitution of a minor and prostitution within 1,000 feet of a church. I didn't even realize that was I've heard of 1,000 feet of a school. It makes sense. I guess everybody in the church is going to be extra offended, I suppose. I don't know that it constitutes its own crime. But okay, according to this, it does. Let's see. Is there anything else to know about this? Apparently, happened March 9th, involving Shorty and a teenager, another Shorty. Police did not immediately return phone call for any further comment. So press 1 for pending charges against Oklahoma State senators for underage prostitution. And, let's see. Meanwhile, Oklahoma Senate has imposed sanctions. They've got to that yesterday, voting 43-0 for a resolution that accuses him of disorderly behavior. I'm glad they got around to that one. Okay, well, it's on the record. There you have it. I don't know if it's earth-shattering news, but it's Twitter-shattering news, certainly. And we have to acknowledge it. Okay, let's see. I wonder whether, I don't know, my messages from Justice are working. So I don't know why I'm not getting messages from Greg. It might just be that he decided it's time for him to shovel or get up and go. But I've got his list of stories here, and we might as well discuss those, even if he can't. So let's see. What have we here? We have, there's some pictures. Here's something from the week. Donald Trump's failing presidency. I like that. Let's take a look at that one and see what they've got for us. James Petacaucus, right? Isn't that... I don't think I've ever read the name out loud. It's always Greg who brings me this guy's work, because I'm never in the week. I don't know what it is. Anyway, Donald Trump's failing presidency sounds like a promising title. What would a failed Trump administration look like, he asks. I think that's a simple question, and we're getting a preview right now. As a matter of fact, it certainly doesn't need to involve President Trump's impeachment and removal from office, though that would help. Rather, imagine this. As the 2018 midterm elections approach, Trump's only accomplishment is starting construction on the southern border mega wall. Good place to start this. I think this will be a nice roundup. So let's see. I'll begin my list of notes to self. I saw a story about the border wall and not the construction beginning, but the eminent domain proceedings beginning against, or at least being threatened against the owners of the property across which the wall will run. Much of that property, of course, in private hands, and the small government, private property-loving conservatives, of course, set to wrench or wrest, whichever you want, that property from those people's hands and build their gigantic fence on it, probably out of Chinese or Russian steel and or cement, I suppose. We'll find out later on. Let's see. So maybe we'll get back to that story. We've also got this one. Also in the Obamacare, that's the next subject of the failed Trump presidency. No Obamacare replacement. That would also be bad, and things not exactly looking up on that front either. Still looking for votes there, and I saw a comment from Paul Ryan yesterday trying to play it like he hasn't changed tax, saying, well, this is the bill we're going to pass. However, this bill is going to have to change in order to pass, and it looks like they just don't have the votes for it just yet in the House, and the Senate becoming more and more nervous about it as time goes on. Anyway, so there will have to be some kind of changes. We'll find out what. Trump thinks they need to get tougher, more conservative, and even less generous in the benefits. I don't know whether Ryan has the same idea. They rarely do, but I guess if you're betting on whether or not both Paul Ryan and Donald Trump can agree whether or not they need to screw people harder, there's a pretty good chance that they will come to that. All right, what else would look terrible for the Trump administration? The only accomplishment being the border wall. No Obamacare replacement. No big tax cut. No big infrastructure plan. Yeah, where is that? By the way, where's the plan to defeat ISIS? And millions of American voters are starting to consider that handing total power in Washington to a party led by a short attention span novice was a cosmically bad idea. I would have just left the S out on that one and said comically bad idea. It hardly seems like a far-fetched scenario right now. That's true. First, repealing and replacing Obamacare, the GOP's top priority, was just dealt a hammer blow by the Congressional Budget Office, if they care about that one. Conservative Republicans will surely focus on the CBO finding that the American Health Care Act would reduce projected debt by $300 billion and cut taxes by $900 billion over a decade. But the more relevant numbers to many Americans, who care very little about that stuff, will be the 14 million people losing health insurance over the next year and the 20% rise in insurance premiums if the bill becomes law. Republicans may quibble about the details and degree, but the CBO forecast is almost certainly correct directionally. And that doesn't sound very good, does it? That's interesting. I was wondering about that number, 14 million. I guess that's just in the next year. That's a pretty precipitous drop in the insurance rate, but 24 million, I guess, over 10 years. So it slows down a bit. That's good. Only 1 million additional people per year, I guess, for the following 10 years to get us to 24 million. That would actually leave us that would be 9 million additional, but okay, we can call it an estimate. Priority 2 doesn't look a whole lot healthier. The GOP plan to deeply cut tax rates depends on the blueprint's controversial and deeply confusing border adjustment provision, where imports would be taxed but exports wouldn't. Not surprisingly, the plan has split GOP business backers depending on whether they export goods, like Boeing, or import them, like Walmart. Dropping this provision, as seems highly probable, would blow $1 trillion revenue hole in a plan already counting on aggressive growth forecasts to avoid hemorrhaging red ink. And while it's true that things look typically darkest before the dawn when trying to pass major legislation, the HCA and the GOP's tax plan both look to be in serious trouble. And they're looking to pass both of them in the next week to 2 weeks, too. That's at least in the House. Anyway, that's rather ambitious, I think. Well, okay. So now, to be positive, they are also more or less fixable, at least on paper, or at least vastly improvable. The health care plan could be tweaked to help the poor and old. I don't know why they would do that, but it could be. By spending more on Medicaid and tax credits for purchasing private insurance. And the penalty for skipping coverage could be made harsher, so more healthy people sign up and create stronger risk pools. My AEI colleagues, I guess, of our writer here, Jim Capretta and Joe Antos, have already assembled a fix. But by the way, it should be noted, outside of the text of this story, that the proposals I've seen floated are actually about cutting more from Medicaid and, if not adding more in the way of tax credits, to eliminate, actually. Last night they were floating eliminating the penalty for skipping coverage, which while extremely unpopular, just as we discussed yesterday, it's going to create an enormous amount of problems. I don't know what they think would get people on insurance if there wasn't such a penalty. I mean, I really doubt, the more I think about it, that penalty can, under a fair interpretation, pass muster for reconciliation, but I don't know. I'm not certain whether they're planning to try that or something else in the Senate, but all of these prescriptions here, and there's just a few that they toss out in this piece in the week, are kind of the opposite direction from what I saw people trying to come up with as a fix last night. We'll see whether the morning's headlines are any different. The tax plan, to return to our article, could also be modified for the better. One option would be to dump the current plan and go with a ready-made alternative like the one proposed in 2014 by former Ways and Means Chairman Dave Camp. That proposal would cut personal and business taxes, but be revenue neutral by cutting or crimping various tax breaks. Or Republicans could keep the current plan and just not cut rates so deeply, especially for wealthier Americans. Trust me, they'll be fine. That would probably work. But again, that's not under consideration as far as I can tell. Of course, the catch with all those possible changes to the health and tax plans is that while they may make them more palatable and passable to moderate Republicans, particularly in the Senate, they would also make them less so to conservatives. Then there's the president himself, who remains a cipher on health and tax plans he would prefer and be willing to spend political capital on. Republicans don't just need Trump to sign what they send him. They will at some point need him to show leadership on the legislation and fight hard for it. Of course, anything hard, very unlikely for Trump, in more ways than one, I'm sure. But we'll not get into that. The kids are still home. Anyway, well, let's see. There's no indication that anything is moving in that direction. No indication of any interest in him showing any leadership. In fact, he went to Nashville, Tennessee yesterday to hold a rally. And I understand, I didn't watch the rally, but I understand it was televised. And that he now says he may want to do rallies like this every 2 weeks or so, which is an amazing, really an amazing abdication of his responsibilities as President of the United States. But we knew he was going to do that. And an indication that he's got no interest in providing what amounts to leadership on a legislative initiative in the way Congress will understand. I mean, a rally could be a good place to do that. And it's funny, traditionally, presidents who need to rally and show leadership for a legislative initiative might do something like that. I don't know if it would necessarily be a rally, but certainly a barnstorming tour of appearances in public and making the case and through speeches and site visits and other symbolic gestures to try and fight for something. But even though he's putting himself in the right venue and setting up the right kind of events, perhaps for his crowd, to try and pressure Congress into doing what he wants, or in other words, showing leadership on these things, once he gets himself in that setting, he reverts to campaign mode. I mean, 100%. He gave the same stump speech. It even resulted in a 30-second lock her up chant, which he didn't answer. That's his version of being presidential about things. But even given the platform of a rally, he didn't use it to fight for the health care proposal in any way that I'm aware of. I mean, it may be that just simply wasn't, that was too boring a piece of the speech for anybody to retweet. But if that's not the headline coming out of the rally, then you're doing the rallies as president wrong. But he only knows one way to do it, so that's what he did. All right, no surprise there. Let's see what else Greg has for us here. There's a picture here. Let's see if we can at least open it up and have a guess. Without his commentary, it's sometimes difficult to know where the pictures are coming from and what they're all about. But let's see if we can't try and, if nothing else, get some narrative ideas here. Yes. All right. Well, this gives us the next highest priority, I would think, in terms of headlines of the day. Federal judge halts Trump travel ban hours before it was to take effect. This time, a suit in Hawaii, which, hey, Judy, send me the whole Hawaii thing, please. and I'll read it over. He has sent me a screen grab here. Let's see. Is this supposed to be the top headlines maybe from the Washington Post or the New York Times or something? Because that's a good roundup here. And we'll take a look at news about the judge's ruling, because I understand it really was a tough opinion issued. And the district court out of Hawaii, I'm not certain how long this one lasts. I wouldn't bet a great deal on it, but the Ninth Circuit was kind of hostile to the travel ban to begin with, and I'm guessing that Hawaii is in the Ninth Circuit, although they could have stuck it anywhere, I guess. I don't really know now that I think about it. When I think West Coast, I think Ninth Circuit, but let's search that up. I'm going to have to do some on-the-fly Googling here. Hawaii Circuit Courts. Let's see, what federal circuit? Hawaii, we'll put it that way. Federal Circuit. And maybe it'll tell me. I mean, because sometimes the offshore place, Ninth Circuit. Okay, that makes sense. Sometimes offshore, they're it's off the Pacific coast. You would think, okay, put it in the Ninth Circuit, but sometimes they do something dumb and stick it in somebody else's circuit, but it's in the Ninth, and so they're not exactly hostile to, or not exactly friendly to the travel ban. They are in fact hostile to it. They were. It was their en banc decision, wasn't it? That stopped. That was the major blow to the first version of the travel ban. By the way, during the rally yesterday, he found out about that news, and he said, this was really interesting. He said, let's go back to the original version of the ban anyway. That's the one I wanted. That was the one, of course, that got clobbered. He doesn't understand how this works, but he was at a rally. So he says to the rally crowd, let's go back to the original version. I understand that what killed him with the judge in Hawaii was all these stupid statements being made on the record by him and staff. In this case in particular, Stephen Miller, the rather arrogant doofus who is not a lawyer but plays one every day in the White House, whose comments saying essentially, we changed the form and some of the wording a little bit, but the policy outcome is meant to be the same. It's still supposed to be a Muslim ban, and the judges were not happy about that one. Maybe they could go on the record saying all judges are idiots and see if that helps them any. I see there's also breaking news, or at least news covered by Think Progress. It says a federal judge in Maryland has also blocked part of Trump's second version of the Muslim ban. And I did, for the sake of bipartisanship, throw out a proposal for a third try at the Muslim ban. And I thought maybe if anybody came into the United States, the customs agents that were suspicious of, they could try this simple test on them and say to them, terrorist says what? And if they fall for it and say what, boom, you just admitted you're a terrorist and we can exclude you. Certainly on that basis, you should be able to keep people out. Almost any court, even the Ninth Circuit, will take a confession, I would think. Although, I mean, I guess you could argue about whether or not it was a coerced confession. All right, let's see. Oh, well, it opened up the picture for me over at Think Progress rather than the article. A nice fist pump photo of the slack jowled Donald Trump with the fist in the air. He's very stupid looking when he does this. All right, well, let's see. This is the second, I guess, of the courts yesterday to use his words against him. Esther U.C. Lee has written this one up for Think Progress. Federal judge in Maryland blocks major parts of Trump's Muslim ban. Judges are using Trump's words against him. Whether Maryland joined in Hawaii's use of his own words against him, I have not found yet, but maybe this article will tell us. And if not, somebody used his words against him, and we'll hear something about that from Think Progress. A federal judge in Maryland ruled early Thursday to temporarily block major provisions of President Donald Trump's revised executive order. We're down to 6 Muslim-majority countries, of course. Oh, yes. That reminds me. I saw several pictures yesterday of the president meeting in the White House with a Saudi delegation, including the Crown Prince. And, of course, whenever they visit the United States, they come in their traditional garb. And I found it interesting. It must have been a sight to see had they flown commercial into Dulles, which of course they didn't, right? I think we mentioned this, the idea of them strolling through while other people were being pulled to the side. Yeah, okay, I think we did mention this one yesterday. But we have an unusual relationship with Saudi Arabia, and they weren't even they weren't the seventh country to get listed the first time and then eliminated to bring us down to 6 this time. They've never been in the ban, which is, I don't know. It seems to me it's still a critical hole in the ban. I don't want them to add them necessarily, but as a judge, you'd be looking at this thing and saying everybody knows that 15 of the 19 9/11 hijackers were Saudi citizens, and they're not on the ban, huh? I don't know if it makes any sense to ban their citizens any more than anybody else, but yeah, also interesting. I never did get an explanation about why the seventh country that came out from last time, from round 1 into round 2, was Iraq. And I wondered whether that was them thinking, geez, if we don't let them in, are we declaring the Iraq war a failure? And, I thought Trump was ready to do that because he was wanting to blame it on somebody else. But I'm curious. I never did see an explanation for that. And I'm sure it was put out there. I just didn't care very much. All right. Well, let's see. So the Maryland move, it says here, came just a few hours after another federal judge in Hawaii issued a similar but broader ruling against the Muslim ban. Trump's revised executive order, which was set to take effect today at 12:01 a.m. That's the right time for it. Anyway, it got blocked. The initial executive order also applied to green card and visa holders and travelers from Iraq, as well as gave favorable treatment to Christians. I think all of that so far eliminated in round 2. On Thursday, Judge Theodore D. Chuang ruled against prohibiting travel from Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, the central provision of Trump's ban. Chuang, that's Chuang, by the way, did not put a full block on the executive order, but in his decision he also writes that plaintiffs did not sufficiently develop an argument to support temporarily banning refugee resettlement. In this highly unique case, the record provides strong indications that the national security purpose is not the primary purpose for the travel ban, Chuang wrote in his decision. The fact that the White House took the highly irregular step of first introducing the travel ban without receiving the input and judgment of the relevant national security agencies strongly suggests that the religious purpose was primary. And the national security purpose, even if legitimate, is secondary and a post hoc rationale. The pair of rulings represent a strong rebuke to Trump's policy, true, which administration officials have argued was necessary out of national security concerns to ensure stricter screening practices of travelers from those countries. The judiciary has so far been skeptical that's the case. Using the words of Trump and his cabinet members, Judge Derek Watson in Hawaii, boy, there's judges all over the place here, huh? Okay, concluded that the order failed to establish a strong likelihood of success, that it wasn't rooting its claims on religious discrimination. Trump fumed over Watson's decision during the rally Wednesday night in Nashville, Tennessee. He said the order he blocked was a watered-down version of the first one. Trump said, decrying the decision as an unprecedented judicial overreach. Rawr, rawr. He then said he may take the issue to the Supreme Court. Yeah, sure. I guess he will, but whatever. Who knows whether they'll care. After the Hawaii ruling, the Department of Justice issued a statement Wednesday night saying that it disagrees with the federal district court's ruling, which is flawed both in reasoning and in scopes. Scopes. Okay, well, plural? Sure, why not? The president's executive order falls squarely within his lawful authority in seeking to protect our nation's security, and the department will continue to defend this executive order in the courts, the DOJ statement continued. Strong difference there from the last DOJ statement when Sally Yates was nominally in charge. Immigrant and refugee advocacy groups who were plaintiffs in the Maryland case have cheered on both rulings. The Maryland District Court has issued yet another strong judicial condemnation of Trump's unconstitutional Muslim ban, said Omar Jadwat, the director of the ACLU's Immigrant Rights Project, who argued the case in Maryland, and he said in a statement, if, as promised, he continues to try to defend this indefensible order in the courts, or goes back to the first iteration of the ban, he will just keep losing, and maybe eventually he'll get tired of all the losing. You never know. I guess we'll wait and see. Okay, let's see. I want to make sure that both of these articles that I have in the other computer here are saved to Pocket so I can pull them up for you. And let's see. What else have we got here in our Skype list? Oh, yes, right. We were looking still at the other top headlines of the day. There's also Ryan conceding that the healthcare proposal needed to change in order to pass the House. So we can find a source for that claim. That's good. Also in the news, Dutch anti-Islam leader Geert Wilders, I'm guessing that that's Wilders, if not, then Wilders, fizzles in elections. He didn't get trounced and drummed out of government, but his party won, I think, considerably fewer seats in the Dutch parliament than they previously held, and so they won't be taking over the government anytime soon. In fact, they've lost considerable influence there, and that's always good news. Good indication of things to come. Hopefully that trend continues in Europe and elsewhere, and hopefully continues here. I think it's now a little bit easier, having seen that anything can happen if you're not paying attention and voting vigorously to defend your national values, not your nationalistic values, but your national values, your true national values. Trump can happen to you. And that was clearly a strong message. I don't know how many Dutch people are going to be voting here in the United States. Probably zero. But, I like the trend, that's for sure. All right, let's get this off the screen here. The college basketball stuff is occupying screen space that I need for breaking news via Twitter. Here, let's see. Next up on our list from Greg. Let's see. Something else from the week. I'm going to go to the week twice. This must be important. Paul Waldman writing in the week. And so you know it's important because if Waldman says it, it's got to be good. I guess. There are a couple of Waldmans running around out there. None of them that we have read so far are related, though. Anyway, what will decide the fate of the GOP's Obamacare repeal? Glorious self-interest. That sounds likely, to be sure, and Paul Waldman is usually on the ball on these things. In the late 1940s, just in case you were wondering where we were going to start with this one, a bureaucrat in the Bureau of the Budget, the predecessor to today's Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, came up with what would come to be known as Miles' Law. When one of his subordinates took a job at another agency, Rufus Miles predicted that the gentleman would soon change his position on the cuts to that second agency's budget that he had theretofore advocated. Miles was right, giving rise to the maxim, where you stand depends on where you sit. We've heard that one before, right, Greg? You've told us that one. Once the man's direct interests changed, so would his beliefs. With the first great legislative drama of the Trump administration underway, it's natural to think that this is a fight over ideology. How much responsibility to ensure health security does the government have? Is healthcare a right or a privilege? Should the free market be left to do what it will, even if it fails? These kinds of questions do matter a great deal in the design of competing plans for our healthcare system, but the practical question of the moment: is the Republican effort to dismantle the Affordable Care Act going to succeed or fail? Will be determined by where everyone sits. Let's take this illustrative example of Tom Cotton, the spectacularly conservative senator and future presidential candidate. I can't stand looking at his face. Oh, that ruined my day. Known for saying things like, groups like the Islamic State collaborate with the drug cartels in Mexico. They could infiltrate our defenseless border and attack us right here in places like Arkansas. Cotton is the darling of the Tea Party right, if they matter anymore. With a 96% lifetime rating from the American Conservatives Union. And it's not hard, because Tom Cotton is 12 years old. So you might expect him to either support the Obamacare repeal bill written by Paul Ryan and supported by the Trump White House, or, if anything, attack it from the right. Yet, Cotton has sounded like the voice of cool reason, counsel and care, patience, and a rewriting of Ryan's bill. As it's written today, this bill in the House of Representatives cannot pass the Senate, Tom Cotton says. And I believe it would have adverse consequences for millions of Americans, and it wouldn't deliver on our promises to reduce the cost of health insurance for Americans. You might have expected to hear that kind of thing from one of the few moderate Republicans left in Congress, like Susan Collins of Maine, though it likely would have included a note that she was deeply troubled by the whole thing. Why cotton, though? When you learn what effect the Affordable Care Act has had in Arkansas, it makes a lot more sense. It may be a heavily Republican state. Trump beat Clinton there by 27 points, but it accepted the ACA's expansion of Medicaid, and the results were transformative. According to Gallup polls, in 2013, nearly a quarter of the state's residents were uninsured. By 2016, after full implementation, that figure had dropped to about 10%. Only Kentucky, another red state that also accepted the expansion, saw as dramatic a reduction in the uninsured. If the ACA were repealed, 381,000 of Cotton's constituents, or nearly 13% of the state's population, stand to lose their health coverage. Allow that to happen, and his re-election doesn't look so certain. Of course, also we should note, and it may be that the other Waldman notes later in the article, big impact, I'm sure, from the town hall meetings there. Of course, Greg made sure we had the audio from that confrontation, and that one really went about as close to viral as anything. Paul continues here. I have little doubt that in his heart Tom Cotton would like to see the ACA cast into the lake of fire. I'll call it anyway, lake of fire, and replaced with some glorious free market system. But for now, he's going to do what his interests dictate. That's what they're supposed to do. Ideology is important, but not more important than where you sit. And guess what? That's fine. We like to tell ourselves that what we really want are politicians who are unbending in their principles, guided by philosophical tenets they refuse to violate no matter what direction the situation of the moment might push them in. But that's not what we actually want. We want them to be principled so long as they're doing what we want. We're happy to have our representatives knuckle under like cowards as long as they're knuckling under to us and not to somebody else's interests, like maybe Russia. He didn't say that, but I just thought I'd throw that one out there. And that's very true. And that's kind of built into the system. It doesn't really matter why they do the right thing so long as they do. And if they do so in craven cowardice, because they've been threatened adequately by their constituents, that's kind of the system at work. And it's okay with me. All right. Let's see what else is in the Skype list here and see what we can make of it and what we want to pick and choose from to include in the show. Let's see. This one here's a URL that doesn't tell me anything, but it's from McClatchy, so I want to check in on that. Centrist Democrats struggle to draft a survival strategy. All right, that is pretty interesting. Heidi Heitkamp's photo illustrates this one. And, so far, I wouldn't think it would be all that terribly difficult. Certainly if Tom Cotton is panicking. I don't know if this is necessarily all about health care or whether it opens up a wider net here. Let's see. This in McClatchy, as I said, Alex Rorty, whose name we hear from time to time on the show. Let's see. Well, let's take a peek in here. That's intriguing. It was a secret meeting about an existential crisis. It begins... Gathered behind closed doors in a Denver hotel, 30 conservative Democrats plotted a potential path forward for their party, an effort to devise a strategy that might help them avoid total annihilation in red states across America. When was this, I wonder? These political moderates had been called together by former Alaska Senator Mark Begich, and they showed up out of fear that their party is growing more liberal by the day. Yikes. Or rather, I should say, it's growing more liberal by the day. Possibly it's growing more liberal by the day. Or is it growing more liberal by the day?
No!
It's growing more liberal by the day.
What the hell is supposed to do, you moron?
It's growing more liberal by the day.
Unacceptable!
Yeah, I don't really know exactly what the problem is, but they're conservative, so that's the problem. I would say maybe that is, what if that was your strategy for survival? Anyway, but of course that would also mean it would be less interested in their centrist positions. Suspect, but okay. It's a stylistic choice. Over a packed 3-day schedule with a battery of presentations, the U.S. senators, former federal prosecutors, mayors, wow, I can't read, and top cabinet officials from the Obama administration in attendance talked about faith and religious voters, heard from a radio host, it wasn't me, but it could have been, about a medium typically reserved for conservatives, and considered research suggesting that liberal priorities like student loan debt are just not a big deal. Hardly a typical Democratic event, but that, Begich said, was the point. Of course, he's a former senator, so who knows what, okay, I mean, he's not terrible usually, but, I don't know, he is former. You can't get the majorities back without independent and centrist Democrats. You just can't, Begich told McClatchy. It's important that we come together and figure out without conflicting with other groups. That's the issue, isn't it? The former senator said the participants saw an opportunity to come lay down their ideas and not worry about, is one group going to like it or is one group going to not like it? That's a strong statement to the Democratic Party, because that means there are wings of the party that want to do the right thing, knowing we have some challenges, said the Alaska politician. Let's see. Begich and other Democrats at the forum said they didn't want to provoke the party's progressive wing, which has argued vehemently since last year's election that Democrats need to adopt the type of muscular liberal agenda advocated by the former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, an independent Vermont senator. In case you didn't know, the interview after interview, the party centrists who attended said they could find enough common ground with the party's left wing to avoid conflict. Gee whiz, I hope so. The forum's guest list was nonetheless a who's who of current office holders and former candidates from red states, including Heidi Heitkamp, Stacey Abrams, the minority leader for the Georgia General Assembly, and Greg Fisher, the mayor of Louisville. Begich would not name all the participants, yikes, saying some of them preferred to keep their involvement private. But Connor Eldridge, a former U.S. attorney who ran unsuccessfully for the Senate in Arkansas, said in an interview that he'd brought 6 former U.S. attorneys. He declined to name them. Here we'll pause and note the fact that the purge of U.S. attorneys that was noted the other day has also been noted by political observers for this reason, that it, let's see, I think I might have even put a story aside on this one. I'll scroll around and see if I can find it, but yes, there we are. Something from Politico. We'll skip around a little bit here. Politico noting on, what was this, maybe Tuesday, why Trump's prosecutor purge could haunt the GOP, and the subheader will sum things up for us nicely here. Democrats are already looking at former U.S. attorneys as potentially formidable 2018 candidates. They've been fired by Trump. That opens the door to potential heroism if they were to strike back. I don't know. People are really enjoying it if they will speak out and lash out at him. Although really it also has, you got to be careful because of course it can smack of disgruntled former employee stuff too. But largely they will be people, sometimes they will be more conservative, obviously. Prosecutors tend to be that way, and that won't guarantee any kind of super enthusiastic response among progressives. But in some of these places where you're not likely to get a super progressive candidate in some of these red states, this I guess that's why the overlap of the story, right? Being a U.S. attorney, being a prosecutor, seems like it's strong imagery for the centrist / right-leaning Democrats who are looking to be not unprogressive, but the alternative to the progressive wing, and think that they have such conservative constituencies that they need to stand apart somehow. So I agree. That will probably be a rich vein to mine. Some of them may be former Republicans, as a matter of fact, but almost all of them will have been appointed at some point to their seats by Barack Obama, and they've got that going for them. All right, so let's see. Should we skip back now to the DC, the centrist gathering as covered by McClatchy? Let's just see if we can get a couple other names from out of the hat here. Ken Salazar, was there. There was the presentation about faith and what millennials and Generation Z, America's youngest generation, are experiencing in the economy and politically. Joel Heitkamp, the senator's brother and talk radio host in North Dakota, I guess that's the talk radio guy we mentioned earlier, addressed the group to discuss how the participants could engage with radio, usually the sole province of conservatives. And I don't know that Joel Heitkamp is considerably different than that. I've never heard his show. That's some combination, though. The presentations helped the group arrive at 4 core values. Hooray, they found some core values that would unite Democrats of all kinds, according to Begich. Security, that sounds good. Opportunity, we love that. Compassion, excellent. And results, terrific. 4 very good words. We all like those. If you're an independent Democrat in Alaska, you care about those 4 issues. There are, of course, 6 people in Alaska total, but whatever. If you're a liberal in California, do you care about those 4 issues? The answer is yes, he tells you. So if you're a liberal in California and you wanted to answer for yourself, don't worry about it. Begich has got you. Let's see. Anything else? Any other names we might be able to pull out here and give us our bearings? No, I think that's about it. I mean, it's not a total loss, and nothing's coming of it yet. Don't get mad. Let them organize. It's okay. We'll see if we can move on here down the list and see what else there is that's fun to grab. New York Daily News, that's usually good. What do we got? Stephen Colbert mocks Rachel Maddow's Trump tax return segment. I don't know if we're necessarily... by the way, we covered that backlash a little bit yesterday, but I don't know. I think that's fading a little bit, and I don't know how well that's wearing for everybody. I think it's kind of, people were bemused perhaps by the lack of a huge bombshell in that coverage. But on the other hand, I think there are other people playing a longer game here too. And I think that it's a good place to start. It never hurts to keep the tax returns in the public eye. And of course, the more you sift through these things and the more material you're able to force out into the open, the more issues you'll discover that feel a lot more like the prize you once had your eye on, if you feel like you're possibly being distracted. Let's see. There were 2 other articles that he tweeted along here, and it's now about 10 o'clock, which means it's time for me to remind the kids to get ready to go. And I may have to take some time off to catch their attention to do that. By the way, maybe I can roll some of my good old-fashioned audio from way back when, get those crashing vor songs. That might not be a bad idea, in order to find my way to getting the kids out the door on time. Why not? Let's see. Do we have anything good? Oh, I usually go to that fun song, that old Thank God and Huey Long song. Let's try that one and make sure everybody is up and moving.
Farmer's got to go to work from sunup to sundown. Then he's got to load 'em up and get his crop to town. He's alright, he's got a brand new road he's driving on. He can thank God and Huey Long. Junior's got to go to school to learn to read and write. Daddy only had a slate to get his letters right. Junior's got a school book that can teach him right from wrong. He can thank God and Huey Long. Huey is the man who says that we should share the wealth. He put up all the hospitals, he cares about your health. Says that every man should be the king of his domain. What's his name? What's his name? So if you think that you should share the wealth of our sweet land, if you see the king that lives inside of every man, if you have a dream to see your kids grow proud and strong, you can thank God and Huey Long. You can thank God and Huey Long. Thank God and Huey Long.
Well, I hope the second of the two to leave the House is going to be a little bit more autonomous, because I don't know what I'm going to roll when that one comes around. You might hear that song again. I think I have another one around. All right, a little bit out of breath, running up and down the stairs. We have dispatched the first of the two to leave. Fingers crossed that he doesn't miss the bus and come back and ring the bell and knock on a door. But I guess if that happens, I don't know. You'll hear some more music. What else has Greg got for us here? I'll continue to mine this vein. Why Steve King keeps winning? That's a good question. Oh, 2 Steve King bits. Let's take a look at those things. Politico with this one. Who's writing? Dave Price. Why Steve King keeps winning? And remember, we're supposed to, sympathize but not empathize? Do I have that one right? With the deplorables who keep sending him back, and reach out and understand them. Has Chris Arnade talked to people about why they like Steve King so much? That would be a good series of questions to ask, I guess. Let's find out. Why do you think Steve King keeps winning? Is it because his constituents are racist? How long does this article take to tell us that? Well, it's a lot of words for just saying they're racist. There must be another explanation. While most of the country was freaking out about Steve King's recent comments about America's demographic destiny, racist old white man, disgusting human being, you need to resign, were just a few of the comments on Twitter. Iowans, though, were less surprised. Count the state's governor among them. So why does he keep winning? By the way, a good point being made also in favor of censure of some kind for, there's actually a formal censure from the House of Representatives. Just interesting that they didn't censure her, but that there was disciplinary action of some kind against Elizabeth Warren because she read Coretta Scott King's letter in the Senate about Jeff Sessions while they were considering whether or not to make that guy Attorney General. And they shushed her and told her she needed to shut up and that she needed to have her words taken down, and that it was a horrible breach of decorum. And, of course, it backfired and led to the provenance of the nevertheless she persisted line. And that's all well and good. But how does Steve King say this and get nothing? I mean, it wasn't said on the floor. There is that. But we know what he said. There can't be censure for that. It doesn't have to be words taken down from the record. That's not what we're asking for. Just straight up censure. He said it and he's a jerk, and we acknowledge that. He could still serve in Congress. He should resign, but he won't. But guess what? We're not going to get that kind of justice. On Sunday, King, who represents the state's northwest corner, had tweeted in defense of the Dutch anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim politician Geert Wilders, who didn't do very well following that. He understands that culture and demographics are our destiny. We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies, and nobody even knows what the hell that's supposed to mean other than I'm racist. When observers pointed out that the sentiment mirrored the infamous 14-word credo of white supremacists, we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children, King didn't back down. Doesn't resemble it that much, but certainly resembles it in sentiment. Asked about the tweet on CNN, the congressman declared that he had meant exactly what I said, and added, if you go down the road a few generations or maybe centuries with the intermarriage and all that nonsense, it's not even Southern. I'd like to see an America that is just so homogeneous that we look a lot the same. And we would if we did more intermarriage, but okay, he means keeping it white. At the end of the interview, he recommended that viewers read The Camp of the Saints, a French novel about immigration that is widely considered xenophobic, if not openly racist. Not long afterward, in another interview, King predicted that Hispanics and the blacks will be fighting each other before the country becomes majority-minority. In the midst of it all, the white supremacist website, The Daily Stormer, embraced King as a hero. I guess we should note here, The Camp of the Saints is something I know nothing about except that it came up a couple of days ago as the book that weirdo pseudo-intellectual garbage pile Steve Bannon loves to push on everybody too. It was far from the first time that Iowa's most controversial politician had provoked outrage. On the possibility of a President Barack Hussein Obama in 2008, he said the Al-Qaeda and the radical Islamists and their supporters will be dancing in the streets in greater numbers than they did on September 11th. On the Supreme Court's ruling in favor of same-sex marriage in 2015, their ruling really says anybody can marry anybody. You could marry your lawnmower, which isn't an anybody, but it's better than the box turtle. King has also tried to block abolitionist heroine Harriet Tubman from becoming the new face on the $20 bill, displayed the Confederate flag on his desk, because Iowa was a huge Confederate hub, and et cetera, et cetera. There's more and more, but we'll cut it off there. Actually, the rest is about, never mind that Iowa fought with the Union during the Civil War. Well, so did West Virginia, and you see them all over the place. Okay. And yet, King keeps winning, and by large margins. He has served in Congress for 14 years. It says he served Congress, but I don't think that he did that. But it's barely true that he served in Congress. Anyway, making him the state's most senior member in the House, and he served in state politics for 6 years before that. His position has made him a, forgive the cliche, kingmaker, not just in Iowa politics, but also nationally. And also at home, I think. I don't know. He probably has children. Given our state's place in the presidential election process, that's very important. In 2015, nearly a dozen Republican hopefuls trudged up to Des Moines for King's year-old Iowa Freedom Summit in a testament to his growing political clout. All of which helps explain why Chelsea Clinton, Representative John Lewis of Georgia, and CNN commentator Ana Navarro were enraged by King's latest comments, labeling them racist, but his fellow Republicans are generally loath to criticize him too harshly. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, House Whip Steve Scalise, and former presidential candidate Jeb Bush all spoke out against King's remarks without using racist in their initial condemnations. Most newspapers didn't either, but anyway, neither did most every prominent Iowa Republican leader. Governor Branstad, Senators Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst, State Republican Chair Jeff Kaufman, and others, even as they artfully tried to distance themselves from the comments. How does King seemingly survive every flare-up? Well, it helps to understand that the district he represents, Iowa's 4th, which covers much of the western half of the state and stretches across the northern third as well, while the area includes mid-sized cities like Ames, Fort Dodge, Mason City, and Sioux City. Population's about 25 to 85,000 people. Most of it is made up of rural areas and far smaller cities where the Census Bureau counts in the hundreds, not thousands. They are towns like Cleghorn, Mallard, and Lytton. I guess Lytton, L-Y-T-T-O-N. Sorry, Iowans. That no one outside the state has ever heard of. See, you can forgive me. Unless they are professional political operatives. And I'm still not that, so I still get a pass in my view. Geographically, the district encompasses 39 of Iowa's 99 counties, making it the largest of the state's 4 congressional districts. Iowa used to have 5, but lost one over the past decade. King, who founded a construction company before entering politics, lives in the heart of this Republican bastion in rural Chiron, K-I-R-O-N, you tell me, a town struggling to reach a population of 30. And, 300. I was thinking of they're struggling to reach an IQ of 30. Maybe that's Steve King himself. All right. I wonder how the town feels. Locals here in the Hawkeye State are generally proud to think of their neighbors as Iowa nice. But another word, besides the 4-lettered kind as critics often use, come to mind for those who have watched King for years. Blunt. It's a descriptor they use almost with a sense of endearment. He's blunt. Says what he thinks, says Gwen Eklund, and we know they've said that about other people too, who earlier this year concluded 8 years as the Republican chair of Crawford County in western Iowa. King grew up in the area, and Eklund has followed and supported his political career for decades. As she explains it, the brusqueness, not bluntness, but brusqueness now, turns some people off, while others just love it. I think it's the same phenomenon as Donald Trump, she figures, and that's about right, probably. He's very charismatic. He's not. But that's what her husband Arlen says. Let's see. He's a gifted orator. He can speak easily for 45 minutes without notes. That's certainly better than Donald Trump can. He goes on for a while. He speaks. He has no notes, but it's not very good. There is more to King's tell it like it is appeal, though. Northwestern Iowa is changing. Financially, the farm community has struggled over the past few years with commodity prices for corn and beans often falling below the cost of production. Sounds like they need some big government. That's helping to shrink the rural population, especially among younger people who are increasingly looking to bigger cities like Des Moines and Cedar Rapids for better job opportunities. According to the U.S. Census, King's home county of Crawford now has a population of about 17,000 people, 4,000 fewer than it had in 1900. That's going way back. The area has been nearly all white for generations, but that too has been slowly changing as more Hispanic immigrants have arrived. Well, that's the only thing saving your population, isn't it? But you don't care about that. In 2000, the county was about 93% white. That's now down to 82%, with Hispanics accounting for nearly all of the change. Eager to make a living for themselves, many newcomers have been willing to take lower-paying jobs in agriculture, manufacturing, and meat packing. And not everyone is comfortable with the changing look of schools, grocery stores, and churches in town. Well, tough luck. Why are those jobs so low paid? They don't appear very interested in attracting the local white population to do them, so in comes some, that's the way this stuff, who knows? There's no explaining it to them. They're gimme-tarians. There are some Steve Kings out there, says immigration attorney Jason Finch, who practices in Denison, where the chairwoman of the local Republican Party that we were talking about, she also from Denison. He also practices in nearby Storm Lake, two communities with rising immigrant populations, and he doesn't mean it as a compliment that there are Steve Kings out there. I had a county attorney tell me it was his life's mission to deport as many immigrants as he could. Still, Finch reckons that anti-immigrant sentiment is held by a shrinking majority in the region, and where it exists, he says it tends to be rooted more in ignorance than racism. Okay. I mean, it's probably true. I don't know if I feel any better about that. The younger generation handles it a lot better than the older generation does, Finch says. That's good news. Politically, much of King's district is deeply conservative with registered Republicans, nearly 200,000 of them, easily outnumbering registered Democrats at fewer than 125,000. That makes it hard for challengers to take on King, no matter how many controversial assertions he makes. He had a tough re-election fight in 2012, his opponent being Christy Vilsack, spouse of former popular Democratic Governor Tom, who would later become U.S. Secretary of Agriculture. King's district had been redrawn, and it was less Republican as a result, but King ended up getting a boost from Branstad, who had grown concerned with the dynamics of the race and personally sent staff to the campaign. King won by 8 points. The next year, as Congress debated comprehensive immigration reform, King took a stand as one of the most conservative and most controversial voices speaking out against illegal immigration. For everyone who's a valedictorian, he told Newsmax, referring to young undocumented immigrants crossing the border, there's another 100 out there who weigh 130 pounds. What's wrong with that? And they've got calves the size of cantaloupes. I remember this one because they've been hauling 75 pounds of, not good old-fashioned agricultural work product, but marijuana across the desert, I'm sure. Iowa Republicans cringe at the words, but no prominent leaders strongly denounced King at the time. Now, there's more to the article, and we could go on, but I think we're all taking away pretty much the same thing. There's a good number of people in his district, shrinking to be sure, but some number who believe, as he does, that he's right. They're glad he is telling it like it is, just like Donald Trump, who never tells it like it is. But of those who don't agree with him, they're all chicken to say so. Oh, gosh, he makes me so uncomfortable. That's all right. So it's an old story. There was another piece that Greg included here that also mentioned King, the Iowa starting line entry here. Why Western Iowa keeps voting for Steve King. I imagine it's largely the same story. I'm just going to quickly skim through this, but I can't. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it, and it looks like almost the same content, because of course he makes the same controversial statements, and those are outlandish, and they are going to be mentioned. So basically, why does he keep winning? His district permits it. People think he's telling it like it is. He's a truth teller like Donald Trump. The end. I don't know if I have any more to add to it than that. Let's take a look over in Pocket then and see what other stories, what I thought yesterday I might want to share with you. There's a lot of it. Some topical, some good background information, some just for the day. Let's see. What have we got here? More staffing issues. I'll just quickly mention this one to you. DefenseNews.com brought this one to my attention. We've had so far a good look at a couple of different departments and where they're having trouble. State Department was the focus the other day, this time the Defense Department. Yes, the State Department falling apart, as we noted. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson off on a trip, almost unstaffed at this point. By the way, causing a lot of controversy as well. He took no media with him. He didn't take the press with him. They didn't go on his trip, but he ended up taking somebody from the Independent Journalism Review, right-leaning publication. No particular expertise in foreign affairs and not likely to ask any tough questions, basically. So why take anybody? Why one? I don't know. He gave some excuse about saving money, but it actually costs money because usually he takes a plane, apparently seats 26 people. So he went alone with some staff and one journalist. They could actually make some money back if they sold those seats to journalists, but never mind. Anyway, today's focus is on the Pentagon, and it turns out that, according to this report written by Aaron Mehta and Joe Gould in Defense News, that Jim Mattis is having sort of it's my way or not my way or the highway, him or me sort of thing. And in this case, her or me. Either this one goes or I walk kind of confrontation with the Trump White House. And so far, the Trump White House has been blinking on this one, according to the article. 2 months into the Trump administration, top jobs at the U.S. Department of Defense remain largely empty, as they do in all the departments. But supporters of Defense Secretary Jim Mattis are quietly expressing hope that a top Trump aide, who they see as a roadblock, and they write it correctly here, whom they see as a roadblock for nominees, will soon move on to a new role, which could speed up the nominee process nearly 2 months after Mattis took office. Hopefully won't speed up the process any, but it'll speed up the process of nominating them anyway. Sources who support Mattis have grown increasingly vocal about frustrations with Mira Ricardel. I'm hoping that's the pronunciation. A top defense voice on the Trump campaign, who also served as part of the defense transition team for the administration. Ricardel, it's Ricardel, is positioned in the Office of Presidential Personnel and has been a vital part of the new nominee review process, including conducting personal interviews with prospective nominees. A number of sources, including one inside the administration, said Mattis and Ricardel have directly clashed over nominees. Two sources speculated that Ricardel had hoped for a Pentagon position, I guess herself, when the transition ended, perhaps as Undersecretary of Policy, but where supporters of Mattis see Ricardel as a roadblock to progress, those on the Trump team view her as a loyal soldier, loyalty, who is looking out for the interests of the president. She's extremely well respected and liked at the White House, one administration source said. The White House thinks she's done great work in a difficult situation. It now appears that she'll be moving out of the OPP position soon. The administration said she's in line for a senior position within the Department of Commerce that deals with the national security world. Huge in commerce, I guess. Sources from the Pentagon say that the move comes after a major clash with Mattis, with one source familiar with the discussions going so far as to say that Mattis told the White House either Mira goes or he walks. They blinked. The administration source, a Trump loyalist, denied that and defended Ricardel, saying that the clashes with Mattis should be seen as a badge of honor, as Ricardel held the line against politically unacceptable candidates. Well, he knows better than the generals, so maybe she does too. Mattis being upset with her has absolutely nothing to do with this. I don't see how that could be. This source said, adding, she's doing a job that she can't anymore because of her nomination. Jim Mattis has zero to do with her job prospects. She didn't answer any emails over it, but this is just another, it seems, of a long line of battles over appointments. It says down here, lower on in the article, since President Trump took office, there have been reports that Mattis has clashed with the White House team over appointees. Those who back Mattis, the only Senate-confirmed appointee at DOD, have put the blame squarely on the White House, saying the Trump team is blocking qualified nominees out of a political ideology test. I guess if you ever were for somebody else in the primaries, you're likely to have said something bad about him on Twitter, and that would have reached his ears. Those inside the White House, meanwhile, point out that the president has the right to pick people who share his worldview and put them in top spots in his administration, and see no reason why they should give jobs to individuals who slammed the president over the course of the long 2016 election. Fair enough. It's just that they don't have anybody doing any of the work. But maybe they don't want to. Maybe that makes their planned cuts easier. And let's see. We can skip on over to them. Let's see. I think that really kind of sums things up. Just want to put that out there on the record that defense is having many of the same problems. Let's see. We have here a brief breakdown of some of the hundreds of eliminations, cuts, and increases proposed in the Trump budget that Kate Sherrill has sent us, a screen grab here. Defunding the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, public broadcasting, and the one everybody saw yesterday, Meals on Wheels. That seems surprising. I mean, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I've never known Trump to oppose a meal in his life. Also listed for cuts, almost $11 billion from the State Department. Rex Tillerson, who I've taken to calling Secretary of State Rex everything, and you might as well do the same. Guess what? He doesn't oppose any of this because he just doesn't oppose Trump, period, on anything. $11 billion out of their budget. EPA, $2.5 billion, but I thought they were going to eliminate that whole thing. But no, I guess not yet. They need to have some fun with it. Transportation Department, $2.5 billion. Education, $9.2 billion. And I mean, that's actually got a smaller budget to begin with. Anyway, this budget is insane. Small Business Administration, $100 million. Don't want to take too much out of Linda McMahon's pockets. NASA also gets a $100 million cut there. So small business and the biggest business we've got, space exploration. I mean, it's not the biggest business, but I mean, you'd think that would be the most cost intensive anyway. IRS gets a $239 million cut as well, of course. They can finish up his audit, I guess. Treasury Department gets $500,000. Labor Department, $2.6 billion. Justice, $1.1 billion. Interior, it goes on and on. So the cuts are mounting. It's pretty easy to see. All right, let's see. It's getting about time to remind he's the son number one, but number two in terms of leaving the house. So let's see. Everything looks to be rolling along smoothly. Coat going on. Have a great day. Everyone say bye. There you go. Okay, thanks. Many well wishers for you there. Have a great day. We'll catch you afterwards. We'll cash you outside. How about that? Okay, I know he hates that phrase too. We all do. All right. What other things of interest? I can delve into the more esoteric here. Or shall we? Are there more headlines that we really need to get to? Another big headline, I guess, yesterday. A couple of indictments on the Russia front. The FBI charged 2 Russian spies and 2 hackers in a big Yahoo data breach. Might as well put that one on the record here, too. Spencer Ackerman joining in the coverage on this for The Guardian. Let's make sure that they don't have any auto-playing video here. It just looks like it's getting ready to go. I don't trust them. Yeah, I bet it's going to go here. Let's see. Can I at least mute it? And hopefully it won't crash things either. The U.S. has announced charges against 2 Russian intelligence officers and 2 hackers over a massive Yahoo data breach that affected at least 1 billion user accounts. I guess it was okay with the Justice Department to go forward with these things. Maybe Trump doesn't know these Russians personally. Or maybe somebody has convinced him that they need to put up some sacrificial lambs who are arguably Russian so that it doesn't look like he has some kind of crazy pro-Russian bias. I'm not sure what the thought process was here. The indictment unveiled by the Justice Department on Wednesday said that the hack targeted the email accounts of Russian journalists and opposition politicians, so it doesn't focus on U.S. elections. Maybe that's why it was permitted to go forward. Former government officials in neighboring countries, also several U.S. government figures, including cybersecurity, diplomatic, military, and White House personnel. Well, at a press conference in Washington, Acting Assistant Attorney General for National Security Mary McCord said the Department of Justice is continuing to send a powerful message that we will not allow individuals, groups, nation states, or a combination of them to compromise the privacy of our citizens, the economic interests of our companies, or the security of our country. The Justice Department has previously charged Russian hackers and hackers sponsored by the Chinese and Iranian governments, but Wednesday's indictment marked the first criminal case for cyber crimes brought against Russian government officials. Well, that really is something. It comes amid intense political controversy over Russian interference in the U.S. election, of course, including a data breach of the Democratic National Committee. McCord declined to comment on whether there was a link between the Yahoo hack and Russia's alleged attempts to sway the election in Donald Trump's favor. But the indictment provides the latest indication that the U.S. is willing to retaliate against data thefts with foreign ties in a criminal forum. I guess we have that. So not a direct tie, but very interesting nonetheless. I might read on here because I just want to get down to this part here where I see a name popping up. The two Russian intelligence agents identified were Dmitry Dokuchayev and Igor Sushchin, I'm guessing. Sushchin, yes. Both of whom work for the FSB, the Russian spy agency's successor to the KGB. Dokuchayev was described as an officer in the FSB Center for Information Security, or the insecurity of your information, anyway, known as Center 18, which is supposed to investigate hacking. Wow. Well, they got that backwards. Well, they're investigating. I'm investigating doing some hacking against you. According to the Washington Post, which first reported the news of the charges, he began working for the agency to avoid prosecution for credit card fraud. That's some top-notch stuff there. He was one of two FSB agents arrested in December, according to Russian news agencies, and charged with treason over alleged cooperation with the CIA. Boy, he's in trouble everywhere. That guy's going to turn up dead somewhere. It was unclear at the time whether the arrests were linked to the U.S. elections, hacking, and details of what exactly the men were accused of have been scarce, with a series of contradictory insider leaks provided to various Russian outlets. A top expert at Russian cybersecurity firm Kaspersky was also arrested, as well as people with links to a group of Russian hackers called Shaltai Boltai, which posted hacked emails from government officials online and sold them in anonymous online auctions. Wow. Well, that's kind of shocking, too. The reason I wanted to get down there was how many U.S. computers are protected by Kaspersky antivirus? The guy... So here's a guy arrested for espionage and hacking who's a top expert at Kaspersky, which is protecting some significant percentage of American computers from hacking. Maybe we need to reconsider whether or not that virus protection stuff is doing what it says it's doing and not something else. That's a little scary, but we've had that possibility brought up before on the show. I just wanted to kind of put that out there again. The article goes on at some considerable length. I do want to digest this perhaps off the air, but I wanted to at least get on the record that there were these arrests, and we can look into it a little bit deeper and try to connect any dots, perhaps for a Friday show and into next week as well. Let's see. What other interesting items might we have? We can sort of divert ourselves over to other more conspiratorial stuff, I guess. Oh, look, I did stumble upon a reference for the very good point made, as I mentioned the other day, about Elizabeth Warren getting in trouble for reading the Coretta Scott King letter. Well, Congressman Steve King gets to spew his racism all over the place unopposed. It was Robert Reich on Twitter. So I guess that, well, at least gives us our source here. Let's see. Okay, let's go with some of the dot connecting conspiratorial weirdness stuff. Let's see. I've got, you may have seen this one. I'll recommend it to you if you haven't seen it. Gosh, there's an awful lot that we could go to here. Here, the Washington Post had a piece over the weekend that was fun and interesting, but I think mostly just reinforced things we knew about Steve Bannon. I just liked it coming under the headline, during his political rise, Stephen K. Bannon was a man with no fixed address. We have talked a lot about how we didn't know where the hell the guy lived, and we still don't know where the hell the guy lives. I still have no answer as to whether or not he lives in the Breitbart embassy or not. And this story, I think, even raised a little question about whether or not he really lived there at all. It's a little bit of a weird thing not to know where somebody so important either lives now or has lived for the past couple of years. Issues that I saw people pull out of this thing, just to be on the record with noting, okay, we've got them in mind. We'll see what we can do with them at some point. What can we connect them to? Lots of people pointing to the fact that I guess he moved out of a place somewhere that apparently had a hot tub, and that the owner of the place he rented it from, the landlord came in, cleaned the place up because he sort of trashed it, and it looked to the landlord like the hot tub had at some point been filled with acid, and everyone was trying to figure out what are the good reasons for filling a hot tub with acid. I can't think of any, and of course most people's thoughts went to things like dissolving the body of prostitutes or political opponents or unruly neighbors or God knows what. Not a lot of good reasons for a hot tub full of acid that I can think of either. I failed in that challenge. Also, people pulling out of here, let's see, I guess, among other things, the questions down in Florida over just what is his address and did he commit any sort of voter registration fraud. He registered to vote a couple different times in a couple different places in Florida. And apparently there's an open investigation into that. That would be a little bit like, again, as Greg usually says, getting Al Capone on tax evasion. But hey, I'll take it. And, of course, voter registration fraud, well, to gimmitarians, I guess it doesn't mean anything. But for the rest of us, it's worth noting when they are ridiculous hypocrites. Anyway, just sort of an interesting way of putting things. No fixed address. He is a bit of a rambler and a bit of a weirdo, and this just adds to that, pile of garbage that we know about him. More conspiratorial still, a piece in The Guardian on Robert Mercer and his connections to all of those weird projects which the news media previously pointed to as tremendous visionary political successes for Steve Bannon, explaining his rise to prominence. And I put it out there again for your consideration that it may just be that the Mercers bought him, bankrolled enough things that it looked like he was some sort of political mover and shaker, and it worked to the extent that Donald Trump, a political neophyte, had no idea, no political instincts, no ability to decide who should be working for him and who should not. And so when a friendly billionaire told him, take this guy, he's got this track record of amazing visionary success, which we made up for him, that was enough. He took the bait, and the Mercers were probably very happy. If this guy can actually, he's the vehicle he's the only one who has a shot at winning the presidency for Republicans. He's the nominee now. And if we can plant our team there and convince this borderline moron that these are the guys to listen to, well, hell, that's great for us. It's a very interesting story and connects a lot of dots. We might want to read ourselves out of the show on that one. But I also have this other thing that I put aside. Kate Sherrill had sent to us another thread from Susan Simpson. Does the name ring a bell? It may when you see the Twitter handle. Remember The View from LL2? She has provided provided entertainment and enlightenment for us in the form of tweet storms before, and she's pretty good at dot connecting. And let's see, this one. Let's open it up and take a look at this one. This I thought was intriguing enough to put aside. And didn't ring a bell right at the beginning, but again, Kate was recommending this, so I took a look. Susan begins here. It sounds like the documents Trump produced in discovery for the O'Brien litigation finally leaked. I don't know anything about the O'Brien litigation offhand. Maybe I know it under a different name, but still, when she gets a hold of some documents, it's usually worth taking note of, and we'll take Kate's recommendation on that one. She's pointing here, Susan is, to a tweet that she includes here from Rachel Maddow, or at least the show, saying this was, of course, in advance of the big tax reform or tax forms show from the other night. What we've got is from 2005. The president's 1040 form, details to come tonight at 9 on ESPN, MSNBC. My head is in the basketball world here. So that was the start. That was so during the big build up to that, she began on this. Here, Susan says, is Trump explaining to O'Brien what he'll do if O'Brien goes ahead and publishes his book, there we go, which estimates Trump's net worth at $250 million. Another of the people lowballing his net worth. Now I remember, or at least I think we've heard of the case, right? An unflattering book about Donald Trump, estimating him at $250 million. Karen, thank you, says O'Brien litigation when Trump sued because O'Brien claimed he wasn't a billionaire. Yeah, it looks like what it's shaping up to be. I think you're right. Interesting because, of course, on the program with Maddow the other day was David K. Johnston, who also wrote an unflattering book about Trump, and I assume also reached the conclusion that his net worth was considerably lower. But anyway, very well connected then to that story. So O'Brien gets sued. And I recall that this suit did not go particularly well for him. Here is, I guess, the transcript of the deposition. Let's see. T.O.B. Is that O'Brien? Let's see. Or maybe, well, anyway, T.O.B. is saying, it's very small print here. Plus, would you like to go through the discovery process in a suit with a financial writer? I guess. Okay. So he's setting up the problem for Trump in going forward with the suit. Trump says that wouldn't bother me that much. Maybe I can get a bigger view of this if I open it up a different way. Nah, that ain't helping. Okay. Let's move the microphone so I can get in closer and squint at things. It wouldn't bother me. I think you would find that I'm much bigger than you ever understood. This is Trump speaking. I have one asset that I think nobody else has. And that's that if somebody writes about me badly, I sort of own my own newspaper in a way. Like I went after you on the Today Show. I was going to go after you. I'll tell you who else did a great job on me. What does that say even? Is it Ingracia? All right. I don't even know who that is, but probably another. Okay. Well, anyway, and I think he's a terrific guy. And I give him my regards. I went after you and the Times on the Today Show. It's the worst financial paper. They don't know anything. And I'll tell you something. I think that had an impact. I think they didn't like that when I said that. And I'm the only guy that can, you know what? I'm on the Today Show every week and on every other show. Whereas if you write about a normal person, it might be the only story. It might be, as Tina Brown said, the defining story, okay? Because there might never be another story written. Everybody will remember that one. I have an effing story written about me every day in some form. The other thing is I do have the ability to fight back in the media. I can say that you, Tim, is not smart, is a terrible guy. And I guess Tim O'Brien answering him, a total whack job. Trump is a effing, he loves men. He loves boys. I fully anticipate that, says Tim O'Brien. I don't know what this is. This can't be a deposition. Is this just an exchange that they had on the phone? Trump is too foul-mouthed for all this. Oh, I can say that. Nobody else can. That's funny. So, I mean, it's interesting that he's already, maybe this is the point of Susan Simpson grabbing this piece. It's clear that he is knowingly in the habit of just spewing any lie he wants to and getting away with it. Think about that in the wiretapping sense. I don't even know if that's what she's going for here. But he goes on, only I can say that, nobody else can. And I would only say the truth. Yeah, right. But I can't say that. I can go back into your record and say he's been sued for sexual harassment. He's been this, he's been that. In other words, I'm the only guy who can fight back on an almost even plane. I mean, I'm not saying it's an even plane because you have an advantage. But I have an advantage too. Is he already dopey? Anyway, because I'm on television every day. And television, more people watch television. If I have 15 or 20 million people watching, the New York Times sells 1 million newspapers, okay? It is an advantage. Let me get back to your book for a second. Number one, I think you are a really very talented guy in a certain way. I think you've gotten me totally wrong. I think you have totally missed the mark. Number one, it's going to be an experience for me. Number two, I do enjoy your company. Number three, I want to see if you get it right. And you know what? It's possible that you won't. And it's possible you'll be angry as hell for a couple of weeks. And it's possible that all of the things I said, I will fight you. I will fight you if you're wrong. If you're right, that's different. But if you're wrong, I'll fight. And it's almost like a competitive thing with me. Almost. I almost want to see if you can get Trump. Honestly, I think you're going to write the book anyway, so I'd rather at least give you my voice. I don't want you to write a book and say, well, I made a statement to you. I don't even know what any of that means. Anyway, it goes on here. Susan also writes, in litigation, Trump had a summary of his net worth prepared, but his accountants added a one-page disclaimer about why it wasn't reliable. That doesn't seem like the sort of thing you want done during litigation. It says here, accountants compilation report, a note to Donald J. Trump here written, and there's some highlighted bits here. Should I just go to those? We have compiled an accompanying statement of financial condition of Donald J. Trump as of June 30th, 2004, in accordance with the statements on standards of accounting and review services issued by blah, blah, blah. A compilation is limited to presenting in the form of financial statements information that is the representation of the individual whose financial statements are, what garbage this is, gobbledygook. We have not audited or reviewed the accompanying statement of financial condition and accordingly do not express any opinion or any other form of assurance on it. Here's the highlighted part. However, we did become aware of certain departures from generally accepted accounting principles that are described in the following paragraphs. And I'll just read the highlighted because it's all garbage anyway. I might as well just get to what's highlighted here. She knows what she's talking about. As discussed in notes 4 and 5, several of the values expressed have been based on future interests that, in some instances, are not for fixed or determinable amounts, and in some instances are based on performance of future services. The accompanying statement of financial condition does not include the required summarized disclosures and reports some closely held business entities in a manner that separately states gross assets and liabilities and states certain cash positions separately from their related operating entity and does not disclose Mr. Trump's ownership percentage in certain closely held businesses. All right, what's she getting at here? Basically, she says, Susan does, this is accountant speak for if you had the actual financial data and calculated it normally, you'd get a different result. One more highlighted comment here. Because the significance and pervasiveness of matters discussed above make it difficult to assess their impact on the statement of financial condition, users of this financial statement should recognize that they might reach different conclusions about the financial condition of Donald J. Trump if they had access to a revised statement of financial condition prepared in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. That sounds like a rather long-winded way of saying this is abnormal. This is not something that we would put our names to and say, yes, under the normal conditions under which a condition of financial statement is prepared for anyone else, we would stand by the conclusions. We don't have any idea. He's just too secretive and he doesn't tell us enough to really get a good picture of what he's about. With all these caveats and disclaimers, here's what they came up with. $3.9 billion in assets and $420 million in liabilities. My favorite Trump accounting trick, Susan says, is his claim that club members' refundable deposits for membership at Trump clubs, it sounds better that way, aren't liabilities. That is an interesting, and he got sued over that too, right? Remember, he was refusing to return supposedly refundable deposits to some members of a club he took over somewhere. They sued, they won. But that's what he includes in his assets. Deposits, people who have the right to take back, those are now his. He says this was, and I think this was the one he ended up getting sued over, right? Let's see, Trump International Golf Club in Palm Beach County. I thought this was the one in Jupiter. I thought that he got sued about. Maybe is Jupiter in Palm Beach County? It might be. Anyway, that's a good trick. I like that one. When someone joins a Trump club, they give a deposit of, say, $100,000. Of course, if it's Mar-a-Lago, it's $200 now. And when they leave the club, they get it back. Trump claims this is not debt. Also, in Trump's 2010 book, he bragged that he had $7 billion, with a very obviously pulled out of thin air $3 billion brand value tacked on. And here, I guess, are his assets and liabilities as he claims them. And it's boring, routine stuff. Is there anything fun? He's putting $20 million on Miss Universe, Miss USA, and Miss USA teen pageants. Real estate licensing deals, $107.8 million. This is his valuation. This is 2010, right? Let's see. His liabilities were accounts payable, $4.9 million. Loans and mortgages payable on real and operating properties, $373,760,000. That's quite a bit. Let's see. Anything else worth looking at in that document? We'll move on with Susan's other comments. In his 2014 book, he got smarter and didn't list that $3 billion quite as obviously. It's still there, though. I guess up here he lists it where? Does he have a line item for brand value? Yeah, there we are. Brand value. See note below. He just throws that on at the end. $3 billion. Otherwise, he was $4.4 billion. He adds another $3 billion to his net worth. I don't know what the note says. By 2014, he has a summary net worth of $9.2 billion in total assets, with $17 million in accounts payable debt and $312 million in mortgages and the like. Where does he put brand? Nothing. All right, he just puts down other assets, net of debt, $317 million. It's not $3 billion, but over here he has real estate licensing deals. Yes. Remember in 2010, he's saying his real estate licensing deals are $107.8 million. By 2014, he has a line item that he's calling real estate licensing deals, brand and branded developments. That would be brand value is now $3.3 billion. So he took the $180 million in licensing deals, doubled it, and then added back the $3 billion in brand value and gave it a new line item. Okay. So interesting stuff. That's actually, is that the totality of the thread? Just sort of pointing out his lack of net worth and how arbitrarily he fixes things. All right. Well, that's well worth having. Not a narrative thread per se, but well worth noting in the larger scheme of things. And I know that it was Armando's view that the value in getting those 1040s from 2005 was to point out that he's just not really worth what he says and not pulling in nearly as much. 2005, it was also noted, I think Joy Reid noted yesterday, that would have been about the time when he began his business relationship with Bayrock and Felix Sater and started to put together the Trump towers all over the place and to license all those deals, and a lot of the foreign construction projects started then too. So far more interesting taxes still to come post 2005. All right, let's see. Other fun things that might be well worth our time that we can fit in. Here's a story. The LA Times reporting that the IRS has stripped tax-exempt status from Richard Spencer's white nationalist nonprofit group. And everybody should have a white nationalist nonprofit group. It's for the good of the country, right? And so you want to keep things nonprofit. It's important. Darwin Darko sending us that one. And I appreciate your passing that on. See if we can read a little bit about that one. And maybe tomorrow, Friday, would be a great day then to go to the larger narratives about Robert Mercer and maybe a little bit more into the background of Steve Bannon and where they overlap. Maybe yes, maybe no. You know, you can never tell what's going to explode between now and then. But let's take a look at things. Poor Richard here has been targeted by the IRS once again. And I guess this is another one of those situations where just the political operation, those despicable bastards over at the IRS, they see a red flag like white supremacy or Nazis, and they stop, they pause, that catches their eye, and they take a look. It used to be Tea Party, now it's Nazis. All right, well, at least you got the basics of that story. We just have so many technical problems going on today. We probably should just play ourselves out at this point and try and wrap things up, call it a podcast for the end of the day, and we'll get into some details, hopefully, about what it was that caused the nonprofit status to be yanked from Richard Spencer's group, and there are somewhat surprising details. And we'll get to that. Hopefully we'll have a show Friday. Fingers crossed that we can keep this computer up and running just a little while longer. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you to Greg for sending us all your notes, of course, so that we were able to at least piece together the better part of a show from what we had today. It's a hectic day. The picks are going, and have to get those things entered by noon. That's not why I'm going off the air, of course. Actually, of course, live listeners will have heard us cut out live. Podcast listeners will be treated to this little bit. We tried all afternoon to get things up and running back in a way that would allow us to complete an entire podcast, but it's just really impossible. Things are crashing left and right. We're going to do what we can to try and heal this sick computer, see if we can put together a Friday show, and then scramble over the weekend to see what we can do. We did manage to fix the alarm, which was going crazy as well. All the electronics turned on their heads today. Hope things are going better where you are, and that you have a good weekend if we can't get here to see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thanks again for listening, and once again, I guess more critical than ever that you visit us at patreon.com/KagroX and think about signing up to be a monthly supporter of the show. We're going to have to do some equipment repair here just to keep our things up and running. Maybe you can give us a hand. I hope so. We'll see you when we see you.